Godly wisdom. Last week we left off with the scripture James 3:13 through 17, and your homework was to pray for wisdom. And we learned last week that true wisdom comes from God. And in those scriptures, we learned different things about wisdom. And if you remember, we kind of talked about how, for me, I always think of wisdom as intellectual, but that it's so much more encompassing than that, and that we should pray for wisdom. And so some of the things that we learned last week about wisdom was that wisdom brings humility. Godly wisdom is also pure and peace-loving. It's gentle at all times, and the NIV's word for that is just considerate. So considerate. Wisdom is willing to yield to others, or submissive. It is full of mercy. It is the fruit of good deeds. Wisdom shows no favoritism, so it's impartial. And it is always sincere. So that's what we learned from the scripture last week. And as we were praying this week for wisdom, I did a couple of, when I was praying for wisdom this week, I also read a couple of scriptures about it. And godly wisdom helps us in all areas of our life. And there's many, many scriptures about wisdom in the Bible. And I was taking a look at Psalm 111:10, which says, "Fear of the Lord is the foundation of true wisdom. All who obey his commandments will grow in wisdom." Okay, so let's just break this down. The fear of the Lord is the foundation of true wisdom. And when it says fear of the Lord, what it means, fear in this sense means reverence to the Lord and obeying his commandments. So all who obey his commandments will grow in wisdom. So how do we grow in wisdom? Just told us, right? We grow in wisdom by obeying his commandments. And how do we know what his commandments are? Scripture. So that is one way that we can grow in wisdom, is obey his commandments. And in order to know his commandments, we read the scripture. So we read the scripture in order to grow in wisdom, and we also ask God. James 1:5 says, "If you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and he will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking." How amazing is that? So we ask God. So the two things we do to get wisdom, which I found in researching and praying, is that we obey God's commandments by reading the scripture to know what they are, and then by applying that to our life, and then we asked God for wisdom, which he will give generously. I want to know what you ladies found and how your life was impacted, if you can tell, this past week when you were praying for wisdom. And I can tell you that I had several conversations this week that were critical conversations, some not as critical as others. And I'd been praying for wisdom, but I didn't, in those particular situations, realize until after the fact that God had given me wisdom, because situations that I'd kind of been dreading for a bit has gone really well. And I have no doubt that it is because all week long I'd prayed for wisdom. So ironically, or not, a couple of situations came up this week where I actually had been praying for wisdom, and then lo and behold, God imparted that on me, unknown to me until it was done. So I thought that that was really cool. So I'm going to do this as a separate video. So underneath the comments, or underneath the video, I want you to comment on whatever it is that you have learned about wisdom, or that you have experienced this week when you were praying for wisdom. So good job.